Today's webinar, Take Performance Testing to the Next Level with Netropy Traffic Generation, will be presented by Apposite's very own Cade Nelson. Good morning, Cade.
Hello, my name is Cade Nelson, and I'm a systems engineer with Apposite Technologies. A little background on me: I've been an IT professional going actually into my third decade now. Back in the 90s, I was employee number 56 at Earthlink Network, for those of you who remember the good old ISP days. So a little bit about Apposite. Most of you are pretty familiar with us. We are the market leader in network emulation, and we are now changing the market in the traffic generation field. We're based out of Los Angeles. We were founded in 2005, and we currently have 3,000 plus customers in many different verticals, including enterprise, telecoms, DevOps, and government and military. So in this webinar, we're going to go over the Netropy Traffic Generation solution. It's a simplified solution for network application and security testing. So this product allows you to choose what application traffic you want to send, then emulate it at scale, whether it's just one client or one IP sending traffic, or millions of clients and millions of IPs sending traffic. So when we say client, that could be anything. We could be like an iPhone or a computer or a tablet or some other server. And it's important to understand with the Netropy Traffic Generation solution, not only are we emulating traffic, we can also emulate different applications, as well as the opposite side of the traffic generation. We can also do the servers. So we can create a situation where we generate application traffic. We can emulate many clients running this traffic, sending it over your network, and then we can also emulate the server side as well. So, this is used for testing internal device or devices such as an entire network, SDWAN gateway, next generation firewall, or even all of these at once. So you could actually use us to test all of that once. We can do this with a very easy to use interface and an affordable price. And again, we can generate any type of traffic. And it's you may basically want to use this to find performance bottlenecks or failure points in your network devices. So why is Netropy Traffic Generation better? Well, some of those other products out in the market are legacy, and they've kind of band-aided a bunch of different software together that they may have acquired over the years. And it's very hard to use, and it's not intuitive. We pride ourselves in our streamlined, easy to use single solution that doesn't require any software installation. And everything is on one platform. And again, it's very affordable. And we're very application focused. The traffic we generate is very realistic, and we can support over 1,000 applications today. And this number is growing. So what makes us different? Well, we have a brand new approach that's very affordable. Netropy Traffic Generation is OS agnostic. So this means no matter what platform, what OS you're on, if it's Mac, Linux, Windows, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We support it. We also have a wizard-driven, intuitive step-by-step configuration process. So a typical configuration is either 4 or 5 steps. You choose what ports you want to use. You set the hosts, you set what streams you want to use, then you configure the traffic, you get a summary, and then you hit start and you're off. For those of you who are familiar with our Netropy WAN emulators, you know that it's very easy to use and you're up and running in minutes, and we're trying to do the same with our Netropy Traffic Generation solution. We also have an extensive library of data flows that come with the device free of charge. So some of the other players in the market, they actually upsell for these flows. But for now, we're sending it out with a large library preloaded. So each of our physical ports can emulate up to 1 million clients or unique IPs. So we can make it look like there's millions of clients sending this traffic, or the traffic is originating from millions of IPs, or you could just do it as one. So one thing that is really groundbreaking and people are very interested in is we have the ability to capture real payloads and amplify it. For example, we could record this Zoom call using Wireshark or TCP dump, and we can then load that into our device and we can multiply it thousands. So instead of having the 20 or 30 callers we have now, we can make it look like it has thousands of participants in this meeting. So this is a stateful valid payload, and the traffic looks as though you've just added more people to it. And this is all done in one easy to use interface, no matter which of the apps you're using, and I'll get into the different apps on the next slide. We also have detailed analysis logs and reports. We can keep up to a week's worth of data in memory, allowing you to identify those performance bottlenecks and failure points. So if you're trying to use freeware and some of these other software out there, you'll find that precision, accuracy, and consistency is very hard to achieve. With our logging and our analytics, you know exactly what you're getting every test you run. So here's the applications that come with the Netropy Traffic Generator. We'll start out with the Traffic Engine app. This is the workforce of the 4 applications. It is an intelligent stateless traffic generation, sending intelligent packets. You can use this to benchmark raw performance of a device or a network. You can change your throughput. You can check your throughput, your latency variation, or packet loss. Traffic Engine allows you to send very small packets, very large packets, or you can mix it up. Using Traffic Engine, you can check your QoS and your prioritization on the network. For example, you can set your priority for your conference calls or your voice over IP over something like social media or YouTube. So you can make sure your important traffic is getting priority over your less important traffic. And again, Traffic Engine is stateless. The next 3 apps that I'm going to list off are stateful. So starting with App Playback, this is a feature where you can capture a single stream of traffic and then you can replay it. So this is a really cool feature, and people that see this get really excited about it, and there's many different applications for it. So we actually have a customer right now who specializes in cryptography, and they make a device that actually sits on the network and looks at the different encryption these streams have, and it will make a decision. The higher the encryption, the more priority it should get on the traffic. So this device actually watches the traffic flow through, and then it sets priority depending on the level of encryption. So they needed to test this device, and they were having problems doing this in their lab. So using our device, they just simply made recordings of each level of encryption, just one stream, and they loaded it in our device and they multiplied it by hundreds. So then they were having hundreds of streams running different levels of encryption, and they needed to make sure their device, 1, recognized the encryption type, and 2, assign the proper priority. So that's just one example. You can do that with any sort of application whatsoever. If it's, you know, watching a video or needing to do a Zoom call or checking VPN traffic, we can capture that application and then we can multiply it and look like multiple people are doing it. Moving on, we have AppStorm. So this is a simpler stateful application than App Playback because it's kind of like a drag and drop solution for adding everyday traffic to your network. You can simply choose the type of traffic you'd like in your test. It could be like video streaming, social media. You could use production apps like Dropbox or LinkedIn. We also have databases that you can put in there. We even have something as simple as Uber requests. We can make it look like people are calling Ubers over your network. We also have a really cool feature which introduces malicious traffic into your network. So we have over 40,000 malicious traffic signatures. So you can mix your legitimate traffic with malicious traffic, and you can test stateful devices like your SD-WAN gateways, your next generation firewalls, your load balancers, and other network devices. And you can check, you can have them make sure they block that malicious traffic. And again, as your QoS and your prioritizations working. Our last app is Session Strike. And again, this is stateful. And this is used for benchmarking performance of a server. So some examples of this would be how many transactions a second can your server handle? But this doesn't necessarily have to be like a web server. This could be a server that's handling some sort of logins, like a VPN server, just anything that needs to handle sessions. So some examples of this, a good use case for this would have been, you know, Obamacare back in the day. For those of you who are familiar with Obamacare, when the government launched their Obamacare, they had 100,000 users trying to register at the same time, and their servers couldn't handle this, and they just froze and they freezed up. And as we know in the history, it didn't go well for Obama, and it looked really bad because no one could sign up and there was big problems. So if they would have used the Session Strike application, they would have found this problem very quickly. So now I'm going to jump into some use cases. The first one is SD-WAN evaluation and optimization. So SD-WAN is one of the hottest and fastest growing technologies in the world right now. It's easy to use. It's low cost, and it brings some intelligence to your network. Vendors are selling it like crazy, and businesses are buying it up because it's cost effective. So using our device, our Netropy Traffic Generator device, you can evaluate your SD-WAN controllers, validate SD-WAN architectures, and you can make sure that your optimizations and implementations are working correctly. We can, of course, emulate clients as well as the server side of things, and we're going to send realistic traffic over that. So when it comes to our device, not only can we emulate like we're a branch office right over here, we can also emulate as though we're the corporate headquarters that you're seeing here, as well as some of the cloud applications over here. And then once you add the Netropy WAN emulator, we can emulate MPLS and your internet connections as well. And so you can test this entire scenario in your lab to verify that it's going to work correctly. And not only can we just emulate one branch office, we could actually emulate multiple branch offices and multiple corporate headquarters and multiple cloud services. So the next use case is next generation firewall testing. This should be pretty obvious. You know, what does a firewall do? Well, it has to let valid traffic through, and it'll have to block specific traffic that doesn't, have to do with business or might be malicious. It can also, so like you want to test how well does your firewall perform. So using the Netropy Traffic Generation solution, you can measure, prove, and test it. And again, we can emulate not only the applications, but we can emulate the clients and then run that through the firewall. And then we can emulate the servers to these applications or clients. So we can do the entire firewall test. We can ensure that malware is stopped and legitimate traffic is getting through. So if your firewall does not perform as expected, then businesses are going to lose money and IT professionals are going to lose their jobs. So this is really important that you test your firewalls and your infrastructure. So the last one I'm going to do a use case is a high scale readiness testing. So what is a readiness test? You need to verify your network is ready for prime time, right? So when you roll into production, everything runs smoothly and you don't have failures, so some of these things you're going to be testing. You can emulate video conferencing sessions at scales. You can verify that your VPNs can handle the high volumes of traffic. You can generate different types of media. Maybe some media is supposed to get through, some's not, so you can validate your firewalls, and then you can verify your routers and switches are prioritizing your traffic correctly. So looking at this diagram, again, everything in the dotted borders is what we can emulate. So in this situation, we have remote employees logging into a VPN and then maybe hitting the cloud servers here. So we can emulate both the remote employees and the cloud service and then run this through your VPN, your firewalls, and your switches and verify all of that. Okay. So the Netropy Traffic Generation solution is available in an appliance. You might recognize these devices looking the same as the WAN emulators. So it does use the same hardware as the WAN emulators, but it's different software. So this is not combined with the WAN emulation solution that we have. These are two separate products, two separate pieces of hardware that run on the same platform. We also offer these in a virtual solution that run in VMware, ESXi, KVM, OpenStack, and we can even run in Workstation. And if you want to get really advanced, you can use our RESTful API to automate. We have a fully integrated RESTful API that allows you to do any of the, execute anything the GUI can execute as well. And it's an easy to use RESTful API. We have many example scripts as well as documentation to get people started. So let's jump into a demo. And make sure I'm logged in. Okay, so this is the Netropy Traffic Generation solution. Looks like one of my coworkers is currently running a test right now. He's using ports 0 and 1. So I'm going to set up a test using ports 2 and 3. And I'm going to start off with the traffic engine application. So I'll just give this a name. So I'm going to create a test called Traffic Engine Webby for a webinar, and I'm going to create a traffic engine test. If I wanted to create other tests, I could just simply click on the other icons to choose which application I want to run. But in this case, I want to do a traffic engine. So if you remember what I said before, traffic engine is the workhorse of the 4 applications, and it is stateless. So I'm going to go ahead and reserve these 2 ports so no one else can grab them. I'm going to configure my traffic engine Webby test, and I'm going to add these 2 ports to my test. So the way it's defaulted to set up is port 2 is going to send 100% of its traffic, this is 10 gig, to port 3. And port 3 is going to send 100% of the traffic to port 2. And this will be a 2-way conversation. So this will be traffic being sent in both directions. If I wanted to send in one direction, I could set one side to transmit, the other side to receive. So in this case, port 2 would only be sending to port 3, and port 3 would only be receiving traffic. But for this example, I'm going to be doing send and receive. So it's also important to kind of look up here. It lists your 5-step process for starting a traffic generation test or generating traffic. So first, right now we're on port configuration, then we'll do host configuration, stream configuration, traffic configuration, give a summary, and then we'll start our test. So almost every application uses these 4 to 5 steps. So you'll get very familiar with it. So I'll hit next. So now we're at host configuration. This is where I can set up if I want multiple clients or IP addresses to be sending the traffic. So port 2 is currently set to 32 IP addresses or MAC addresses. If I wanted to maybe make it 1,000,000, I could choose a /12. Or if I wanted to come in here, I could just edit this myself, maybe 500,000. But for now, we'll do 256 hosts in one direction, and we'll leave 32 hosts on the opposite direction. So here's where it gets interesting. We're going to do a stream configuration. So this is how you actually start adding different types of network traffic. So I'm going to add a stream. There are some predefined streams. We already have over 100 to choose from. And this list is growing pretty much on a weekly basis. And you'll see some stuff in here that you recognize like Telnet or TFTP, SSH, SMTP. So for now, I'm just going to do some simple streams. I'll do a TCP stream. So I'm going to name it TCP. And then I can search my streams to make it easier to find what I want to do. So I'm going to add a TCP stream. Now I'll add a UDP stream. And so these are pretty broad. I'll try and get a little more detailed with this type of stream. So maybe I want to do some web traffic. So that would be HTTP. I'll add HTTP 1.1. And now I'll add another stream. Maybe we'll call this VOD for video on demand. And I'll use the RTSP protocol. And then the last stream I'll add will be email, right? And so IMAP, oops, not IMAP. IMAP is an email protocol as well. So now I have 5 streams: TCP, UDP, web, VOD, and email. And we can see that web has HTTP. If I wanted to really customize my streams, and maybe I wanted web to be doing puts instead of gets, I could come in here and edit the headers of my traffic. So I can even come in and change my TCP traffic. Maybe I want to change my source port, my destination ports in here. Same with UDP. I can change my source and destination ports as well as my checksum. And then, you can come into email and you can change your different fetch models and things like that. And even if I don't want to change email, but I want to change my TCP ports, I can do that here. So now I'm going to assign these to run in both directions. So I can either come in and click on these or just click all streams. And what this does is tells me that I want all of these streams to run in both directions. We also have the ability to do very large frame sizes. So we can do jumbo frames, or we can do very small frames. So we can go down as low as 64K streams here. And we can also mix it up and do random to where I can set my minimum and my max. But for now, I'll just leave it at 1500. The next step is configuring your stream profile. So right now, if we look, when port 2 sends to port 3, each one of these different streams is going to get 20% of my bandwidth. But that might not be realistic because, you know, VOD traffic might not be this high, or email might not be this high. So maybe I want to change kind of my bandwidth profiles on these streams. I could come in here and configure my traffic configuration. So what I'll do is I'll set TCP to be 30%, 40% of my traffic, UDP to be 30% of my traffic, web to be 10, VOD to be 10, and email to be 10. So now when I configure this, we can see that regular old TCP and UDP are going to constitute 70% of my traffic combined. So it's 40% for TCP and 30%. So if we do our math, TCP will be 4 gigs, UDP will be 3 gigs, web will be 1 gig, VOD will be 1 gig, and email will be 1 gig because we're setting our bandwidth, and this is a 10 gig link. So I'll do the same for port 3, sending to port 2, and I think I did 40, 30, 10, 10, 10. And we see that get re-rendered with the correct pie chart. So next thing I can do is I can load my profile. So maybe I want to run this test for 10 minutes or 600 seconds, and I just want to run it once. You do that. And now we can set the ramp up time. So maybe I want it to take 30 seconds for my 256 IP addresses to ramp up and start sending traffic. And then I could ramp down. So this is how you could do something like, let's say we were kind of trying to generate traffic to mimic someone's office. So, you know, people might start arriving at work at 7 in the morning, and then by 9:30 in the morning, everyone has arrived and started working. So it'd be a slow ramp up for 2.5 hours as people trickle in, start checking their email, and start doing production on the network. So we could ramp it up. And then as people slowly trickle home, you could ramp down the traffic as well. So now I'm going to hit next. And what it does is it gives me a quick summary of my tests. We can see on one side, sending 256 IP addresses gives me my start IP address and stuff. We're not using a gateway because we're not going through a network in this situation. And then we can check the other side, which is port 3. That's only using 32 IP addresses. And then it gives us our profile configuration where we can see our ramp up time is 29 seconds. Our ramp down time is 31 seconds. We're going to run for 10 minutes just once. So now I'm going to start my test. And now we can see traffic being generated. So this is our aggregate statistics. The first thing I'm going to show you is our dials. So here's my port 2 statistics. So we can see my port 2 is transmitting at 820,000 packets a second. So this is millions of packets per second. So this is 0.82, which is 820,000 packets a second. It's also receiving at the same speed. And then we can see we're sending 10 gig as well as receiving 10 gig. And the same with port 3. I set everything the same in both directions. You can see 820,000 packets send and receive, and 10 gigs send and receive. We also have some graphs down here that show us the same information: packets per second, throughput, as well as latency and/or jitter. So if we come up here, we actually see our live statistics accruing here. We can see we're sending a little over 820,000 packets a second. We're receiving around the same. Our transmit is at 10 gigs. Our receive is at 10 gig. We have almost no latency, less than 1 millisecond. Here's our total packets sent. Here's our total packets received. And then here's the total amount of throughput we've sent and received. And then we have some averages here as well. What's more important and more interesting, in my opinion, is the statistics per stream. So we can come in here and we can look at my PerStream statistics. So remember, I set TCP to be 40% of my traffic. So we can see here it's correct. TCP is at 4 gig, which would be 40% of 10 gig. And we see that UDP is at 3 gig, which is 30% of the traffic. And then we have email, VOD, and web are all at 1 gig, which was 10%. So if you remember when I reorganized that pie chart, this is where we can see this reflection here. This is also important if you're doing any kind of QoS or TOS and you want to verify, hey, does my email take precedence over my video on demand? Or if you have any network priorities set in here, you can come in here and you can verify that you're seeing the prioritized streams in here. So if I had TCP prioritized above VOD or web, I could verify it in here. And again, we have our total packets, our total received packets, and our current throughputs on here as well. So once I stop my test, what happens is it generates a report. So this reporting gives you different graphs, and these graphs are very helpful when, kind of getting an overall picture of what your network performance is. So if you see some sort of anomaly on these graphs, that's normally where something might have failed or something's not configured correctly. You can actually highlight it on the graph. I can come in and I can annotate, and I can start drawing on this, or I can add some text, and I can say, this looks wrong, please investigate, right? Something like that. And then you can also download these graphs as PNG, JPEGs, or PDF, or whatever your preference is. So even though the test is finished running, we still have our statistics. We don't have our live statistics anymore because we're not sending any traffic, but we still have our totals in here, and there is a record of it and everything there, as well as the PerStream statistics there as well. We also have logs that you can download, and it's a zip file. And in these logs, we have simple CSV files of your latency, your packets per second, and your throughput. But we also generate a report log, and you can actually put your own logo up here. You can brand this in your company brand, but it basically tells you what your test configuration is, your aggregate statistics, it gives you your graphing, and then it gives you your PerStream statistics as well, and then a quick summary. So it's a really fast and easy way to generate a report, and it looks professional, and you can brand it however you'd like. And then the last thing you see in this zip file is an XML file. So if I were to want to rerun this exact test I configured, I could come in here, and instead of configuring my test bed, I could just import this XML file in there, and then I could quickly rerun my test. So that was everything with Traffic Engine. I'm going to quickly run through App Storm and then App Playback, and you'll see it's very simple. The reason I started with Traffic Engine was once you understand the flow, all these other applications will make sense as well. So first thing I'm going to do is create a test bed. I'll call this App Storm Webby for the App Storm webinar. And I'll just double click on that, and it's going to create the AppStorm testbed. And again, we're going to go through kind of the same steps. I'm going to come in, I'm going to configure it. And now we see we have our 5-step process again. The first one is to choose my applications. Then I'm going to configure my host and client, do some other configurations, and then do a traffic profile and then load the profile. So this is really fun because it's so easy to use. So this would be used for just, doing some simple traffic tests on your network, and you want to do kind of everyday traffic on here. We also have some attacks and stuff, so it's very easy to use. So maybe first thing I want to do is do some video streaming on my network. Maybe we'll do some social media. So it's all drag and drop. What else do we have in here? Productivity is good. So even as I add these, I can actually customize them even further by double clicking. And we can see under video streaming, we have Netflix, Vimeo, BigFlix, and other stuff. And if I want to test specific types of network, I can actually check and see what's on the Netflix. So here we have play video, fast forward, buffering, loading, back and forth on your buffer. And there's all sorts of different kind of profiles in here, so you can customize it even more. Under productivity, we have things like Dropbox, GitHub, LinkedIn, Mediafire as well. And then under social media, we have all the big guys, Facebook, Instagram. And by all means, these are not complete lists. As you can see, some of these things I don't have loaded in here yet. And I only have a fraction of what's available in here. So there are many, many different libraries you can download in here and use to do your testing with. A lot of people like to use our malicious traffic. So our end-day attacks or zero-day attacks, stuff like that in there. So what I did is I chose the applications I want to emulate on my network. And now I'm going to choose my client. So I'm using ports 2 and 3. I'll make port 2 my clients. And let's make it so we have a lot of clients. Let's do 65,536 clients. I'm doing a /16. So this will be over 65,000 IP addresses that are going to be pretending to be a client, sending all that different traffic, all the video streaming, social media, as well as productivity traffic. And now I'll set my server up to be port 3. I'll configure this. Now I want to do some additional configuration. I want to run these tests in parallel, not sequentially. And maybe I'll crank up my packets per second. Let's make them 82,000. And again, remember, this is a stateful application. This means that we are actually creating real TCP conversations. We're doing real TCP handshakes. So the 3-step handshake, the SYN, ACK, and then the finish, all this. And we're carrying valid payload. This is the exact payload you'd see if you were using Netflix or Facebook or Instagram or one of those. So this is valid traffic. So let's redo our traffic here. Let's hope that 60% of our traffic on our network is productivity and 15% is social media. And then the remaining 25% will be streaming. And again, it will reconfigure my pie chart. And then the load profile is the same as we saw in Traffic Engine. I'll do a 10-minute test 4 times in a row. We'll get a quick summary. And now I can start my tests. So we'll see our data is now flowing through. And again, we see a lot of the same things that we saw in Traffic Engine. We have our speeds, our aggregate statistics, our PerStream Statistics. So if I make this, we can see all the different streams here, different things. Here's someone logging out of Snapchat. Here's someone logging into Snapchat. We have all sorts of different things happening on the network. LinkedIn login, log out, Google Play. And of course, there's hundreds of more streams going on here as well. So this is our PerStream statistics. So for example, we can see uploading a picture is taking up a lot more transmit bytes than the download, the response of uploading that picture. So obviously when you're uploading a picture, your transmit will be higher than your receive. So when we stop the test, again, we get our offline analyzer. You can download all of your CSV files, all your statistics, as well as get that report and everything. And it's, all of this is pretty much the same as what I showed in Traffic Engine. So the last one I'm going to show is called App Playback, which I think is the coolest feature that we have. And it's very, very, very powerful. So we'll do App Playback, Webby. So we're going to do App Playback here. Close that one. Okay, so let's do my App Playback. So again, this is kind of a 4 or 5 step process. First thing I'm going to do is add my ports. I think I might have logged out. There we go. Okay, great. So again, you can see your kind of step-by-step process listed out here. But App Playback, the really cool thing about this is you can use Wireshark or TCP dump, and you can record an actual transaction, a stream. So for example, I transferred a 10 megabyte file using SCP, secure copy, from one computer to another, and I recorded that. So what if I was, a customer that wanted to check to see what would happen when thousands of people were trying to transfer this 10 meg file from one server to another? Can my network handle that? So even though I only did one stream of it, I can now add this to my testing. Here's my 10 megabyte SCP PCAP file. And remember, you get a PCAP by using Wireshark and sniffing your traffic, or using TCP dump, or one of those things. So I added my 10 megabyte SCP to my testing. We also have a bunch of presets in here, a lot of the same stuff you saw in the App Storm, a bunch of Facebook things we can do in here. So maybe someone's uploading a video in Facebook, I'll add that as well. And remember, this is a stateful application. So we are actually going to send the payload exactly like we did it with Facebook, or we did the 10 megabyte file transfer. We're actually not only recreating the handshake, but using our own unique IP addresses, MAC addresses, but we're actually delivering the payload, and we're having the same conversation that Facebook did, or the SCP transfer did. So let's do Netflix. So what do we have in here? Let's do a play video on Netflix as well. So now I've created a test that does 3 things. It uploads a video to Facebook, it watches a video on Netflix, and it transfers a 10 megabyte file from one machine to another. So here's where I set up my client. Client will be port 2, and my server will be port 3. I'm not going to change any of this. You guys have seen me do this a few times already, so I won't dive into it. So I want to actually get a little more traffic, so I'm going to crank up my packets per second, and I'm going to run these tests parallel. We can also make it look like it's coming behind like a NAT device. So maybe this is a bunch of IoT devices that would be doing this type of traffic, and I want to verify that It'll work through NAT in my my network or my switches or my firewalls or my SD-WAN gateways know what to do with the traffic. I could make it look like it's coming from behind a NAT. And again, here's our load profile. We've all seen this a few times now. We'll do 300 seconds, 4 times. And we'll get our little summary. And then again, we start our tests. And now we're going to see a lot of the same stuff that we just saw. We have our graphing running here. We have our aggregate statistics. We have our PerStream statistics. So here we see, you know, my 10 megabyte capture, our transmit packets, our receive packets. Get all the same thing we saw in Traffic Engine and the other apps as well. And then, of course, when I stop my test, we get a report, and all of those are able to be downloaded and annotated or whatever you want to do with it. So I know I went through those very quickly, and I'm sure there's some questions out there. So now is the time to ask those questions. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box down below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, Kate, it looks like we have a couple already. Okay. So one question is, can I map L5 directly to MAC address transport?
Yes, so you can assign your layer 5 to MAC addresses, and you can use your own custom MAC addresses, or we can randomize those ourselves. So I believe the answer to your question is yes, we can do that.
All right, another question. On frame size, can I move 512 MB as one block?
So the frame sizes we can handle as low as 64K and then go up to 9,000. So MB normally means megabytes. So I think you might have meant K. And yes, we can do 512K size packets. That's no problem.
Okay, we have another question that's, can we put other PCAP?
Yes, you can upload any, as long as it's a valid PCAP and it has the full conversation. Obviously, we can't do partial conversation. So if you're doing a TCP dump or a Wireshark and you get a full, complete conversation, you can use that. It doesn't matter what the application is or what the payload is, as long as it's a complete TCP conversation or UDP conversation, you can load that in and use it and multiply it. So you can either run it as a single stream or you can have it as thousands of streams.
And then a follow-up to that, can we customize the test case like login or other test case?
Yes, so when you want to do logins and other things like that, you're going to use the fourth app, which I didn't jump into, called Session Strike. And that's specifically what Session Strike is for. It's for opening up logins or sessions and then sending data through.
All right. I also have a question. Do you have to buy each solution separately?
So I'm not the sales guy, but I believe from what I understand, with the purchase, you get access to one of the applications, and then the other 3 are you have to pay for the other 3, but you don't have to buy all of them. You can buy just the ones you need.
Okay. And I have a question, can the presentation be downloaded? So I'll go ahead and answer that. This session has been recorded, and everyone who's registered for this webinar will receive a copy of the recording as well as the presentation slides.
I like those questions.
So it looks like we don't have any other questions at this time. So thank you everybody for joining, and thank you so much, Cade.
Thank you. Everyone have a great day.